going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ranked by James, where today we're going to be ranking yet another horror franchise. Now, I've already done in the past The Exorcist, Ginger Snaps, Scream, and Friday the 13th, so I figured today, why not just knock out another one of the most classic horror movie franchises of all time. And since I can't really do Halloween because, it's got its own whole season for that, so you're going to have to wait. Why not do the next best, which is A Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my personal favorite horror franchises, with actually a lot of movies that I do quite like. And then there are some others, but we'll get into that. So without any further ado, let's get started. So in last place, and actually the last couple of places, I think for me is going to be a little weird for some people. It's very different from other people's lists, because in my last place is going to be the remake. Now, I think that this is a horrible movie. This is one of my least favorite remakes. Maybe my least favorite remake of any horror movie. This is awful. Like, the original movie is such a classic, and all this movie does is just rip scenes from that original, but does it worse. Like, where the practical effects in the original were so, almost groundbreaking in how they were pulled off, and the movie's visual aesthetic, this one just does horrible CGI that just takes you completely out of any type of suspense that it's going for. The portrayals of the two main characters, Nancy and Freddy, are both just, horrendous. Really, especially when you compare them to the original. Nancy in this movie is like she's sleepwalking through it, no pun intended, but that's really what this performance feels like. And Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy, yeah, I think he could have done good, but his makeup and, the lines he's given and the stuff he's given to do just really, they set him up for failure in this. I honestly think that he could have done a much better job with a much better script, but with what they gave him, God, it's just terrible. I think it's got one good scene. I really like the opening where the guy's kind of, it looks like he's slitting his own throat, but Freddy's actually doing it, but nobody can see him because he's in the dream realm or whatever. But yeah, this is just not a fun movie at all. It's just ridiculous. He's a pedophile now. Great, now we can't even have fun with the character. At number 8 is another one that I just really dread watching if I'm gonna do a binge through of the series, and that's actually gonna be part 5, The Dream Child. This is again a movie that just has so many aspects that just totally suck. What the hell is Super Freddy? Why is there a child who's also Freddy? And also, you kind of get into his backstory here a little bit, which could be interesting. A Nightmare on Elm Street is sort of a series that you could do a prequel with, but the way they do it here is just kind of weird, with the explanations. And I don't know, man, it's just a movie that just looks gross. It's not fun to watch. It's got some kills that are, a little memorable, but other than that, it's just got so many elements that are just so weird, and he's just so over the top with, the hokiness and his one-liners, and, how grand scale these dream scenarios are. It's literally, the dream scenarios are so ridiculous that they're too ridiculous to even believe as, someone could dream this up. It's just, everything is just too over the top and ridiculous, and Freddy's just a joke by this point, and I just really don't like watching this movie. At number 7 is most people's least favorite, and honestly, some people's least favorite horror movie ever, and that's Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And I totally understand where they're coming from, because this movie also just absolutely blows. It's not funny. It's really not. There's a couple of gags here and there that are okay, that was a good joke. And, there's some kills that are okay, that was fun. But when you have Freddy, aggressively dry humping a chalkboard. It's just like, what is happening in this movie? This is the movie that's the most like confusing as to like, how did we get here? Like, what am I watching? You know, his one-liners I think in this are probably the weakest, and all of that is not even to mention like the weird 3D stuff. Again, they kind of go into Freddy's backstory a little bit of how he actually became a dream demon, and his backstory is basically like he was cursed by these great balls of fire that are only in 3D for the last 10 minutes of the movie, so there's like this weird, like, super jarring shift over to bad effects in the end. And then, again, yeah, the one-liners, you know, no screaming while the bus is in motion. Like, I probably delivered that better than Robert Englund delivered that, because you could kind of tell in this movie that he was not really trying. Like, the makeup on him, you can just tell. It just sucks. And I can totally empathize with why it's at the bottom of most people's lists. The only reason it's not at the bottom of mine is because, I don't know, those last two I just really, really don't like. And this one I don't like either, but it's just a slight difference. Like, really any of these could be at the bottom. They all are basically they're all basically tied. Like, these three movies, you know, 5, 6, and the remake, I hate all of them. At number 6 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, this being next to Freddy's Dead in the rankings does not tell you a thing about its quality, because it's about 90 times better. There's like this shift in the Elm Street series that happens after number 4, basically, where it's number 4, it's like, it's pretty good. And then everything after is just out of the blue, some of the worst horror franchise entries in any franchise. And I don't know what's the deal with that, but this is actually pretty fun. So this one follows Freddy's Dead, and, you know, they basically realized, like, wow, that last movie really sucked, so we should probably do something sort of like in a Rocky Balboa kind of situation. Like, we should probably do another movie so that if we never make another one, the last one isn't, you know, abysmal. So they make this, and it's like this kind of precursor to Scream. It's directed again by Wes Craven, who did the first one, and it stars like Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp and, you know, Bob Shea, and, you know, it stars real Hollywood people playing themselves, basically, and it's in the real world. So what happens is this demon, I guess, is trying to get onto Earth, but he needs, like, something to take form, like, to take the shape of. So he takes the shape of Freddy Krueger, and he goes after and terrorizes the people, I guess, who were responsible for, you know, creating the idea of Freddy in the first place. And it's actually pretty interesting. The only reason it's super low is because it's not the most rewatchable. Like, since it's technically not Freddy, and there's only 2 kill sequences in the whole thing, and they're both kind of, you know, like, rehashed kills from previous entries. But in terms of, like, actual story aspect, it's definitely one of the better ones. It's pretty cool. It's just this low because it's just one that I don't, like I said, tend to rewatch that often, just only because, you know, it's technically, like, in the real world, not the Freddy world, so it's just not as much of, like, a fun rewatch as the ones above it. Coming in at number 5 is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Now, I actually really do like this movie. It's not the greatest, you know, Freddy is doing his, like, goofy one-liners here. This is kind of where it really picks up in that aspect, but he's not doing, like, a full-on, like, Three Stooges routine quite yet. This one actually has memorable characters, memorable kills, memorable moments, fun lines. It's just a pretty solid sequel. Like, you know, there's not that much else that you can really ask. You know, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger is great. You know, he's still got some really good makeup on. He's got some fun moments here. And I think that, you know, the main final girl, even though she's not the same actress as Part 3, she still does a pretty good job. And also, I think this might have my favorite opening of all the films, which is really crazy because Some of the other ones are really great, but this one, just the song that it opens up with, Nightmare by Tuesday Night, like, you know, of all the original songs that were made for these 80s slashers, like the song for Friday Part 6 and My Bloody Valentine and Madman and even, you know, the Elm Street 3 song, I think Nightmare is probably my favorite of them all. It's really got this kind of upbeat, but also at the same time sort of eerie tone to it, and I think that perfectly like encapsulates what the movie is. Like, it's fun, but there's also a little bit of still like creepiness, and like, you know, Freddy Krueger, he is a psycho and he is gonna come get you in this movie, but he's not just a full-blown, you know, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse character yet, and so I like it. At number 4, we've got Freddy vs. Jason. Now, I've talked about this a few times on my channel before, and I just really like this movie because it, again, as I've said before, delivers on what it promises. Like, if you look at a movie like Jason Takes Manhattan, where Jason's, you know, doesn't really take Manhattan, Freddy vs. Jason actually has Freddy vs. Jason fighting a lot. And although, yeah, I agree with, you know, some of the, you know, like, naysayers of this movie, I guess, who say that, like, the plot and the setup to actually get them there, you know, doesn't make too much sense. And also, I don't really like the whole thing of, like, Jason being afraid of water and Freddy being afraid of fire. Like, Freddy with fire I can kind of get, but Jason's, like, in the water in, like, most of those original movies, so that doesn't really, it doesn't track. But that's almost kind of a nitpick, because the actual fighting of this movie is crazy. Like, the stunt choreography, Robert Englund actually doing a lot of this stuff, because he is, you know, in the makeup in this movie, it's still him. And I know a lot of people don't like Jason only because he's not Kane Hodder. I think that Jason in this movie is pretty good. You know, Ken Kirzinger, I think, does a really good job taking on the character for this film, and we get some fun kills from him. Like, there's some crazy kills and moments in this. I think it's got a pretty cool and underrated cast as well. Like, there's a lot of recognizable horror actors in this who are even just like side characters. Like, you know, Catherine Isabel is one of them, you know, Ginger from Ginger Snaps, and there's a couple others in there. This is just a fun movie. It really is, and it's one of my favorites in the series. At number 3 is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Now, this might be a bit of a shock because most people have it either at number 2 or number 1, but dude, this being ranked number 3, trust me, again, isn't indicative of how I feel about it, because I think this movie is awesome. You know, it's got the jokey Freddy a little bit more than he is scary, but this is the absolute best version of that. Like, Robert Englund is still portraying Freddy as this super menacing and demented horror villain, no matter how many, you know, like, one-liners or jokes he cracks. This probably has some of the best kills in the series. I wouldn't say it has the best. I'd say that that probably goes to number 1, but definitely the second best. I mean, some of these kill sequences are so memorable, and it's also got probably the most memorable, like, supporting cast as well. Like, all of these characters are great. You know, the Dream Warriors, as they, like, go into their dreams and they figure out, like, hey, you know, Freddy's not the only guy who can manipulate stuff in dreams. Like, these are our dreams after all. We should be able to fight back against them. And they use that to their advantage, and it creates for some really fun moments. Heather Langenkamp also comes back as Nancy, as well as John Saxon playing her father, and I think they're both, you know, great, as they both usually are. And overall, I shouldn't have to sit here and tell you why A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is great. It's one of the best horror sequels of all time, and most people who've seen it will agree. Coming in at number 2 is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, which might be a crazy statement for some people, because some people really don't like this movie, but some people really do, and I'm absolutely one of them. And that's almost solely because Freddy in this movie is absolutely terrifying. Like, it just goes to show you how much Freddy being, you know, a scary serial killing monster can impact the quality of the movie, because that's what he's supposed to be. He's a dream demon, not a dream, circus performer. And in this movie, he is just terrorizing everyone. And Jesse is also a fun character to follow. Like, sure, like, it sucks that, Nancy isn't in it, and she's barely even really mentioned, like, she's only mentioned a few times. But I do think that Jesse is a solid enough lead, and yeah, it's mostly down to Freddy Krueger and his makeup and some of his lines. And I think that this probably has, like, in terms of, like, his makeup and his actual look, probably his scariest look. And yeah, although, like, I can see people not liking it because it takes a lot of, like, creative liberties with, the rules of Freddy Krueger. Like, he's out in the real world for a lot of it, and that's not really how he operated in the first one. I can look past that if the scenes of him in the real world are at least, like, awesome, which turns out they are. You got the scene at the pool and the ending stretch in the factory and a great opening as well, really eerie and all that. And how Freddy actually enters the real world by, like, ripping himself through another guy, absolutely insane, but absolutely awesome. I think this movie's great and really underrated and underappreciated, and for me, it's number 2. But by far, number 1 is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is just one of the coolest, most creative, most, like, evil looking, horror movies of all time. Like, the look of this movie, I guess we can start with that. The whole thing just has this, like, eerie atmosphere of, like, that there's something there, like, there's some evil presence always looming, always watching. And the movie, with its cinematography and its score, is able to, craft that feeling so well of, like, you're never safe. Even, like, when the characters are awake, you can tell, Freddy is watching. He knows what's going on. And you got some of the most incredible scenes in the history of the horror genre, whether you're talking about the first kill and that first dream sequence with Tina, where, he's terrorizing her in the alley, and he has so many iconic moments in just that one scene, whether it's, Freddy's, hyper-extended arms, or him coming out from behind the tree, or this is God, or when she rips his face off and it's just a skull, or when he tears his fingers off. It's literally that one scene has so much going on. Like, that moment is probably the best moment in the franchise and one of the best moments in all of horror. But then you talk about the other kills, like Glenn, when he gets sucked into the bed and then there's just a geyser of blood. Like, I've never seen anything like that in any other horror movie, and that's really, I think, this movie's biggest strength, is that even though it's a slasher, it's so different from everything. Like, there's nothing like it, and anything that even remotely tries is automatically like, oh, that's like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like for example, like when the Black Phone 2 came out, and there was, like, sort of, like, dream sequency stuff in there, everyone was like, oh, this is like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, you can't replicate this movie because everyone knows exactly what it is. It's so unique, so original. Freddy Krueger is one of the coolest horror villains of all time, one of the greatest, like, thought-up designs. Like, if you think of horror villains like Michael Myers, for example, right? He's iconic because of his mask. Jason is also iconic because of his mask and his machete. Freddy Krueger is iconic because of his burnt look, his sweater, his hat, his gloves, his, like, ability to always be in your dreams no matter when you go to sleep. You can't escape him. You have to sleep. He's got so much going for him. He's one of the coolest horror villains of all time, and he's at his best here. This is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and without a shadow of a doubt, for me, it's going to be number 1. So thank you for watching my ranking on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Did you agree? Probably not. But if you disagreed, let me know why in the comments down below. Let me know your list as well, and tell me why. Tell me why you ranked each movie in each spot. I don't know. It'll create for some fun conversation down there. While you're at it, if you enjoyed the video, you can also like and subscribe. It's up to you. And again, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. I think that's awesome. And, well, until the next time, which will most likely be my top 10 horror movies of the 1970s, peace out.